Hello everyone and welcome to your horoscope for the week of July the 17th till 23rd, 2023. We have a really active and quite intense week ahead of us, and the intensity is going to be staying with us not just all throughout the week but also all throughout July, August, and going into even the autumn. But of course, the dynamics and the different arrangements of the intensity are going to be shifting, evolving, progressing all throughout the summer and the autumn. But it is this week that actually begins this very intense period of shifts, of changes, from a certain perspective, even struggle, but the struggle for self realization, the struggle for sovereignty, and of course, the struggle to embody greater self knowledge. Because whatever is going to be taking place this week is also a very powerful chapter of self knowledge, revealing certain things, details about us, our persona, whatever lies deep within our hearts of hearts, but also whatever unconscious forces are trying to, execute themselves. The intensity is going to start at the very beginning of the week, where we do have a really powerful new moon in the sign of Cancer. And one of the specifics of this new moon is that it stands across the sky from Pluto. So, whatever new beginning this new moon represents, well, there is a certain sense of urgency. There is a certain transformational energy, of course, Pluto involved, where we might have to adapt or rearrange certain setups in our lives in order to embody our true power. Or better said, for some people, or externally even, we might want to limit how much power certain external or sometimes even internal elements have over us. Now, on the world stage, without a shadow of a doubt, this Pluto opposition will play out as political shifts, as external shifts of centralized power. So everything basically that influences us, that has a certain power over us, may it be the legislation, the law, external authority, as I said earlier, the government, institutions, the dynamic of politics on the world stage, but also in our local communities. There are going to be rather significant shifts, rather significant rearrangements of the political setup, and also new moon in the sign of Cancer. How do people react to it? How do people feel about it? Do people agree to certain things or very strongly disagree to other things? All of this is going to be expressed one way or another. Now, if this wasn't enough, this new moon also speaks in harmony, a sextile with Uranus, and that means surprises. That means authenticity. That means that whatever lies in the hearts of people, because from a very collective perspective, that Cancer is people, how people feel about whatever is going on in their lives individually and collectively alike, but especially with Pluto, the political setup, the plans, the initiation, the modus operandi of politicians and rulers, and also important people. And speaking about VIPs, rulers, kings, long story short, important people on the world stage, they are also going to take a really, really important role this week, because we do have Venus going retrograde at the very end of the week, but also before going retrograde and also while going retrograde, Venus does hold a quincunx in conjunction with Pluto. So again, how do we feel about whatever is going to be exposed on the world stage this week? Especially whatever is being exposed comes from the rich, the powerful, those who are deeply in the spotlight, those who have certain power over us. You know, Venus is also conjunct Regulus, so kings, queens, very, very important and relevant individuals in the world out there. And if that wasn't enough, Venus also holds another quincunx, not as precise, but still with Neptune, and that gives us a yacht formation where the finger of fate or finger of God is pointing to Venus in shadow and at the very end of the week standing still in the sky and then going retrograde. So that is a very, very important fated event. And it can be, as I said, an event, a manifestation out there, but it can also be just a communication, something that is being shed light on, something that is being revealed or projected upon us, and how we react to it, how we feel about it, or the feelings, the relationship of an important person being exposed on the world stage. And you know, with quincunx, it is a hard aspect. Sometimes it is a secret being revealed, especially with Pluto in the sign of Capricorn retrograde. It is highlighting everything that is corrupt, everything that is not very moral, not very, you know, correlating to our own standards of morality, integrity, and everything that has to do with human rights. And also, speaking about human rights, Jupiter does hold a square with Mercury also in the sign of Leo this week, so it is also going to be about the human rights, rights of children, young people, adolescents. So there is going to be a strong struggle or fight or initiation in this sense, especially collectively, for everything that is not very okay with what I mentioned earlier. So again, rules and legislations governing human rights, rights of children, rights of young people, everything that has to do with, you know, passion, creativity, and the freedom of this is gonna be, you know, at least being tried, if that makes sense, to being taken care of legally, legal fights, legal initiations, legal projects to tackle all these problems. And also another aspect that this new moon holds is a trine with Neptune, that is basically the powerful influence of the spirit, solidarity, people coming together, the power and force of compassion, and new groups being formed under this energy. The needs, the common principles, whatever people agree upon, are gonna represent a really powerful force, as I said earlier, creating new bonds, new connections, new groups, and solidarity overall. And also on the world stage, we may experience and see a powerful gesture of compassion, solidarity. And this is really, really, really good energy for artists, spiritualists, and those who work with the more ethereal part of reality, because trine with Neptune means inspiration, it means the miraculous manifestation of the spirit, it means love, appreciation, and compassion being, you know, part of their lives. Moving on the 18th, we have the nodal shift, which is also really, really important astrological movement, where the north node moves into Aries from Taurus, and the south node moves into Libra from Scorpio. Now, I'm not going to speak in great detail about this energy and what this means for us, because there is a separate video that you can check out. I'm gonna link to it in the description below. And the same goes for the new moon in the sign of Cancer. I also have a separate video examining those energies. But coming back to the manifestation of this week, the nodal shift is very relevant because it will set up the fixed Grand Cross that will stay with us mostly all throughout the week. The new moon that we have in Cancer is also part of this energy. So something is definitely going to be born out of this struggle, out of this powerful energy where we might be feeling the need to initiate. We might be feeling the need to fight for the self, fight for our dreams, fight for our projects, fight for our liberty, rearrange all relationships in our lives so that they reflect our truth. So that they can reflect our highest principles, everything that governs us, everything that we want to embody. That is also gonna be, made manifest in our lives one way or another, just that this energy is very long term in the sense that it's for the next 18 months. But with Aries and the new moon and the sextile with Uranus, it will also have instant manifestations. Maybe in feeling, maybe inner forces are gonna clarify certain things to us, highlight certain things from us, or these challenges may come from our partnerships, from our jobs, from our contractual situations, regardless of where they come from, but they will highlight this urgent need for us to get going, initiate, start working on whatever is very, very important for us, or fight against the oppression, fight against the influence and the power, as I said, either external forces, people, contracts, or partnerships might have over us. Now also around the 18th is when Jupiter and Mercury square is going to be really, really strong. So again, collectively speaking, this is all about initiation in legislation. We are using the power and the strength of the law to transform certain things that don't reflect our truth or the collective reality. Also, this is where certain promises, especially individually speaking, are going to be showing up in our lives, but they might not really be what they seem. So we must take everything that is being promised to us, everything that is being, presented to us as a solution or as a modus operandi how to get from A to B. This is where we must take them, as I said, with a pinch of salt, because it's not necessarily that these are malevolent, these are fake promises, lies, deception, but more like we don't know how they might manifest. We might not know how they might look like when they become concrete, when they become real. Regardless of the person who makes these promises, we might not know how much strength, meticulosity, inner power that person has within their grip to deliver us whatever they promise, and replace person with an institution, with a contractual partner, with manager, job, etc. Everything basically goes. And also a guidance how to get this Mercury square, under control. Well, Mercury in the sign of Leo, whatever is in our hearts of hearts, our desires, our urgent needs, or maybe the needs of our children, the needs of our loved ones, this is also very included. And we might feel the passion, the determination, the motivation basically to help them to get where we need to be desire-wise, but that Jupiter from the sign of Taurus highlights what we do have in a very physical, concrete way, especially money, especially values, especially living situation in our lives that might be limiting our desires. So we need to find a common ground, as an upgrade our values, our material situation, in order for them to be permissive for us to start focusing on our desires and our needs. And when I say upgrade, well, of course, it's easily said, but not so easily done. And Uranus being in a sign of Taurus, that presents the element of awareness and also surprise, where if we know our authenticity, if we know our limits but also our potential, what it is that we can somehow accomplish if we get out of our comfort zones, but also knowing what we simply cannot accomplish no matter how much we go out of our comfort zones, because we also know our limits, we also know our specifics, what does not resonate with us, and we cannot make it resonate with us. Well, this two sides of the spectrum are very, very helpful, because they will show us what it is that we can actually push and force, and what it is that we can't, because forcing it and pushing it and, putting emphasis on it is not going to get us anywhere, because it's not authentic to us value wise, love wise, or we simply do not have the resources. Neither are we, in the situation where we could keep the resources even if they would miraculously enter in our lives. Because sometimes it's not all about money, having the resources, having the, financial situation. Sometimes it's even about being able to carry all of that. Because if we are not structured, if we are not, designed to carry certain financial burdens, and when I say burden, it can be even plus gains, to have a certain kind of material life, to have a certain kind of finances, economics, and money. That is also a burden, because if we are not set up to carry that, to have that, for that to be an integrate part of our lives, then having it will not mean anything to us, because it's not specific to us. So this Uranus really challenges us to know how much and what we can carry. How much and what, and in which manner, in which, modus vivendi, even way of life, it can, be an integral part of our lives. So this is where some people cannot really have extremely more, and I don't want to necessarily say money, but resources or values in their lives, and not because they cannot gain it, they just cannot hold it. It would basically distort their karmic path or their sense of normality in a very negative way. Each and every one of us has a different standards, have different limitations, and they do not need to be seen under very critical eye, as in poverty, as in scarcity, because some people who cannot carry all that much usually have much greater liberty in their lives. So there are always pros and cons, and anyway, this Venus retrograde. So speaking about Venus retrograde, this will start on the 22nd of July, when Venus makes a standstill, stops in the sky, and lasts until the September the 3rd. And this Venus retrograde is going to be taking place in Leo, in the sign of Leo, starting around 28 degrees of the sign of Leo, Venus being at that degree. And she will move back on to around 12 degrees of the sign of Leo. So this Venus retrograde is purely under domain of Leo. So that means everything that has to do with the heart, everything that has to do with our deepest feelings of love, of passion, of joy, sensuality, sexuality, romance. For very many people, this is about having children. Is it the most appropriate time to truly have a child, have another child, or very important key moments, moves, karmic events are taking place in the lives of their children. So how did they react to it? How does whatever takes place in the lives of their children affect their own lives? So, and without a doubt, Venus is also a power player who has a lot to do with currency, with money, our desires, whatever makes us happy, what makes us feel delight, what makes us feel joy. So you can imagine all of these things are going to be under the lens of Venus retrograde. Usually the theme of how this will play out should be already set up in our lives. The big themes that are being highlighted, in feeling at least, we might already be aware of them, we might already know them. Is it something that has to do with your career? Is it something that has to do with your love life? Your passion? Maybe some people are experiencing a certain kind of burnout syndrome where whatever used to truly make them feel passionate and make them feel immersed into something is no longer working or is no longer the way it used to be. Maybe there is a need for rearrangements, reconfiguration. For other people, it's more about their home, how loved, how safe, how secure their familiar, their home setup does make them feel. For other people, it's gonna be about family, the relation with their family. Is love there? Or is love being expressed in a healthy and supportive manner? So this Venus retrograde, as I say, is not gonna be all very easy, especially because on the 19th, the Yod aspect is ongoing. So both Pluto and Neptune are going to be pointing in the quincunx at Venus at around 28 degrees of Leo. So that without a doubt will mark the theme and actually even rub it in for this Venus retrograde. Is someone returning into our lives? And this Venus retrograde will have us look at it again. Sometimes it is all the reasons why that connections, why that love story, why the ex, why that hobby, why that activity is no longer in our lives are going to be highlighted by this Venus retrograde. So everything that we kind of came to know, came to be aware of, why we eliminated that person, that relationship, that hobby, that activity, that feeling from our hearts, is going to be yet again dished out by fated forces. But it can be the opposite. How much things changed, and something from the past coming back in a totally new format, well, can be reintegrated in our lives. So this is where it's really decision time. It's really, we have to live this Venus retrograde and see how we cope, see how we manage, see how our feelings transform and where they will be taking us. Now, on the 20th of July, that's when the Sun and Neptune trine is going to be exact. And this is one of the most beautiful and actually quite miraculous energies that can play out this week, especially. Now, of course, this isn't a very rare aspect because we do have Sun and Neptune trine every single year, but this is where both the Sun and Neptune are at a very special 27 degree. And that 27 degree where Neptune is was very, very active in April 2022. And the Sun trining that degree, well, maybe certain things that have been taking place in our lives back then are going to reverberate now as a blessing. Is that some kind of artistic creation, artistic pursuit, artistic interest that you had? Is that something spiritual? Is that where you done some relevant inner work, releasing the past, trauma, sorting out family dynamics that may reverberate in your life as a massive blessing? For example, highlighting your freedom, highlighting how much good, a new way of looking at things, a new faith, a new even way of thinking can do in your life. But it can also represent dreams. It can also represent the activity and the power of the spirit coming into your life as compassion. People who are relevant members of your life might surprise you, might delight you with the expression of love, expression of solidarity. This can also represent you being there for in the lives of other people. Maybe not even in the present moment, as I said. It can be the spring of 2020 and onwards. What have you been doing? Family wise, community wise, artistically, or in order to be a force of compassion in the world. Everything that you have done might reverberate in your life right now, and needless to say that inspirationally speaking, and to tap into alternate states of consciousness for artists, spiritualists, is a really, really good energy. Now, moving on the 21st, we do have a really tough aspect where Mars and Saturn perfect their opposition. Now, this is where we might be feeling a little bit, how should I express, devitalized. Perhaps this is the best possible term here. We might be feeling not as much energized as we were used to. We might be feeling certain difficulties, either lack of energy, lack of motivation, a certain kind of wishy-washy feelings when we want to go and do our daily chores. For certain people, this opposition might bring up a flare-up in their IBS or sensitivity and smaller disruptions in the digestive tract and in the energy flow of it. For others still, this can represent a certain feeling of disconnection from the spiritual, from the more higher octaves of, their own soul seeking. This can also represent a certain feeling that we're way too immersed into matter and the material than we might be comfortable with. But at the end of the day, this energy is really, really good for anything meticulous. This is where if you have to sit down and go back to the drawing board, rethink something, redo something, fix something, repair something, and that does need meticulosity, this energy is really, really good for it. And also the 21st is important because it's not just this opposition between Mars and Saturn perfecting, but the moon also conjuncts Mars under this opposition. So we are going to be feeling that much more strongly. And moving on to the 22nd, this is when the fixed Grand Cross is ongoing, active, and quite precise. The Sun at this time is at 29 degrees of the sign of Cancer, opposing Pluto at 29 degrees of the sign of Capricorn. So this is quite a powerful opposition. Of course, it's not very rare because we do have a Sun and Pluto opposition every single year, but this is quite special because it's energetic. It will really, really, really rub in the limitative forces that we have in our lives. Where it is that we need to make compromises, where it is that we need to get our power back, where it is that we, like it or not, have to gain a certain strength, certain stability, certain influence in an area of life for us to be able to evolve, for us to be able to basically have a future, to advance towards what we need to be living, experiencing. But of course, there is the nodes of the moon, the north node at this moment being at 29 degrees of Aries, where the south node is at 29 degrees of Libra. Hence, the cardinal Grand Cross is perfected. So we are definitely going to be feeling this quite intensely. This is where immediately it will feel like an impulse, a drive, a frustration to advance already, to get where we need to be already, to get into operational mode already, because this energy will really, really highlight all the nitty-gritty, all the small details, everything in our lives that we know that we do not have yet. in order to give us the power, the momentum, whatever it is that we need for us to be building our futures, to be focused on it, to live the adventure, to basically execute what this nodes, the shift of the nodes, means for us personally. And this Pluto, but also at the same time Mercury squaring Jupiter, and also at the same time where this cardinal grand cross is, how should I say, intersected, if that's the appropriate term, by the Mars and Saturn opposition. Basically, this will create a very, very strong frustration in all of us. The frustration is, of course, specific to whatever it is that we need to have in our lives. But the next day, the Sun moves into Leo on the 23rd of August. So I would like to wish a very, very happy birthday period for all of the Leo natives out there. Now, the Sun moving on the 23rd into the sign of Leo doesn't necessarily break up the power of the fixed Grand Cross yet. So we will be still feeling it. But this is where it's starting to get into action mode. The Sun in the sign of Leo highlights and illuminates our heart space, our courage, our ambition, our determination, whatever power, passion, and ambition can have over us. So this is where it's really, really stirring up the energies for us to be able to make important moves in the following weeks and months, in order for us to tune ourselves into the North Node being in the sign of Aries, sovereignty, individualism, fighting for our needs, fighting for our rights, and basically our overall happiness. Where are our inner forces, instincts, corroborated with our deeper aspirations, South Node and Libra? Where are they taking us in life? In the now. Because Aries is not the kind of energy where, okay, I work very hard and strong and put all my efforts in right now and I'll get some results in a few years. No. Aries is where it needs to feel that it's moving there. Of course, it doesn't need the final destination, but it does need to feel that it's progressing, that it's taking steps, that is on the move, and ultimately that the initiation that it takes does make a difference. And Leo, especially with the Sun in it, can represent the moment, the energy built up when even the heart space, and it is without a doubt that the heart space is a very, very important, let's say, inner element when it's time for action. If that may basically is 50% of the inner impulse and the inner motivation which gets us there. So this is how it's being set up. Very soon, for all of us, our own unique individual ways, there will be a time when we either need to take action, we need to work on something, we need to initiate, we need to express an option, a choice, we need to get, things going. And this cardinal grand cross, well, immediately it can feel very, very limitative and frustrating, as in, why am I not being able to do something, to make a move? Why do I have all these limitations in my life? But that's almost like a slingshot where the projectile, whatever that is, a stone or whatever, is being grabbed by our fingers and pulled back. But that takes a longer moment of time until, the impulse is there for us to be able to release the projectile. And this moment of pulling it back and having a tight grip on it is the feeling of the Grand Cross, of the Cardinal Grand Cross. It is the momentum, it is the energy, and all the motivation that goes along with it, all the, let's say, positive motivation, the dream, the grand goal, but the negative motivation as well. I so want to get out of this situation already. I so want these limiting forces from my life to disappear already. So these two and these go so hand in hand with the Aquarian energies that are ongoing. Okay, maybe not in the present moment because Pluto moved out of Aquarius, but that doesn't mean anything because that is the larger period. We are in the age of Aquarius, the Saturn and Jupiter meeting in Aquarius, 0 degrees Aquarius in December 2020. That started the karmic cycle of the next 20 years specific to Aquarius. So this duality of energies and motivational forces does go very well with the Aquarian specific setup. And needless to say, the North Node in Aries, the strong individual energy, also goes hand in hand with the Aquarius expression. And if this wasn't enough, there is the slingshot analogy, but we also have the Venus retrograde, where our hearts are truly re-examining certain things from the lens of strong realism. Because that is what this Venus retrograde is going to be all about. Leo is a very, very realistic energy. Sometimes, of course, it does have unrealistic goals and, targets and dreams and stuff like that. Because it has to dream big, doesn't it? But at the end of the day, it is a fixed fire sign. So it needs to have a very strong realism, because it is only under realism can it hold its power. And any fixed sign wants to hold its power long term. So it does need, again, I'm so sorry to use this word, but the realism of it. And this is exactly the quincunx to Pluto. The realism. What is real emotionally to us? What is real to our hearts of hearts? And in itself, that's subjective, of course, because we are speaking about feelings, but we do need to tap into our inner truth in order to see what's real and what not, what we can accept, what is specific to our authenticity, and what just isn't. And this is also the Venus retrograde squaring Uranus later on. That is all about our authenticity. And then there is another quincunx to Neptune that's all about the illusion, what is not real, what it is that we simply cannot embody, as beautiful, as idealistic, as dreamy, as, fantastic as certain dreams, aspirations might be. But the quincunx, if it isn't really for us, it might work so beautifully for another person, but if it's simply not specific to us, to our souls, to our hearts of hearts, then dreaming it and pursuing it is truly in vain. So this is what the quincunx, this yod aspect, tries to point out. What kind of dream, feeling, love, ambition, desire, aspiration is real to us based on our own authenticity, and what simply just isn't. So thank you so very much for listening. In the following, I'm going to be mentioning a few words about how this fixed Ren cross and also the Venus retrograde might play out in the lives of the individual signs. So please stay tuned for a mini horoscope that will follow. For natives born under the sign of Aries, well, this is definitely gonna be a really intense week, but also a very, very intense period, intense next 18 months, because they are the hosts of the North Node. And as I said, in the sign of Aries is very, very, very action oriented, initiation oriented, and also fight oriented, But when I say fight, by no means do I mean violence or violent outbursts, but more like a philosophical or idealistic fight where it is you, your dreams, your goals, your needs, and everything that might get in the way, everything that might limit it, and it can very well be inner forces. Now, it isn't just the North Node entering your sign that is very important this week, but the Jupiter squaring Mercury from your second house is also very, very, very relevant, because Venus will go retrograde in your fifth house, Mercury being also in fifth house along with Black Moon Lilith. And especially towards the end of the week, Mercury does conjunct Black Moon Lilith. So what does this mean? This means that certain investments, certain financial speculations, certain projects, certain methodologies to get where you need to get, in the shorter term future, are not gonna be what they looked just a couple of days or even a couple of weeks ago. Now, I don't want to say that this energy disappoints, but it is kind of similar to a disappointment where certain dates, certain facts, certain figures do not add up the way it was in your calculation. So this will mean a reconfiguration. This does mean going back to the drawing board and very, very quickly readjusting whatever it is that you can. Certain, financial promises, especially if those are investments, if those are starting a project, starting a business, starting a firm, starting a work which should get you resources, money, etc., etc., well, those might be put on a different date, or the general setup might be a little bit different, much to the frustration of Aries natives. But going just to the Venus retrograde, well, this Venus retrograde is really about your true values. Who it is that you love, what it is that you love, and how it is that the love is being expressed. Because, Venus in the fifth house kind of also projects on the 11th house, which means how lovable do you feel? Because whatever it is that you have love-wise in your life, and by this I don't necessarily mean like a romantic relationship, even though that is totally included. This can be project, business, your everyday normality, but how does it make you feel? How much love do you feel that exists in your everyday life? Now that is gonna go under a very powerful introspective and retrospective lens, where if you're not satisfied, if the dynamics of love and passion and also like creativity does not reflect what you're comfortable with, that means big changes are upcoming, but more like towards the autumn and winter period, when Pluto will move back into Aquarius and actually touch on this 11th house. That will be the time when the changes are already lived. But before they are lived, this is where it's a heart storming really in the fifth house. What love means to you and how you not just achieve it, but keep it. Hold it down for the longer term future. And needless to say, with the South Node in the 7th house for you guys, relationships, all about how much you can tolerate, how much you bring to the table, how much tolerance the partner, romantic partner or any other kind of partner, do they have to, put to the table when dealing with you. So this is a very, very strong introspective, of the self, what it is that you project onto other people, and how does that make other people feel, and of course vice versa. What do others project on you, and how does that make you feel, And how does that, bold with your future plans, especially the most deep personal future plans, everything that is just about you. This will cause very powerful, as I said, changes and rearrangements in the landscape of your partnerships. For natives born under the sign of Taurus, this is equally an important week because finally the North Node is leaving your sign and moving into the sign of Aries, which for you guys it is 12th house. So this is quite a mystical period. This is quite a mystical summer and even autumn for you guys, when very powerful soul level realizations are being dished up by karmic forces. Now, without the shadow of a doubt, this will involve family dynamics, especially the family of origin, parents, grandparents, extended family, how it is that you feel connected to the family, being part of the family, or, of course, for some natives, what kind of family patterns, family karma, energies that are specific to the family of origin do you want to eliminate from your life or distance yourself from it. For other people, how can you create a greater sense of balance and harmony in your family dynamics? Now, of course, this is where it's also all about your dreams. It's also about your aspirations. It is also about your soul level goals, which might have very little to do with physicality, which might have very little to do with, the setup of your life in the present moment. Maybe you desire to live in a certain way, a certain modus vivendi, a certain, place where you want to live and experience certain events. It can be basically anything that has to do with your soul level desires, but it will be how will you live them? How will you integrate them into your life? And this is not a short-term energy. This is not about next week. This is about the next 18 months really. Because certain setups, certain arrangements in your daily routines, in your larger life setup will have to be modified, will have to be changed. They will have to be, sometimes demolished to the very, very foundation and rebuilt, especially if you want greater liberty in your life, especially for some Taurus natives who want to immerse into greater physicality. Why not? Where they want to introduce certain physical routines in their lives. For example, exercises, health benefits, any activity, any purpose, any lucrative setup which actually increases the physical health or you being able to enjoy life in a much more physical sense. For example, traveling, for example, the time you allocate to work, to profession, to career, and how much time you allocate to the deeply personal things in life. Diet can take a very, very important position in the next 18 months. Very many Taurus natives are definitely gonna change their diets, eliminate certain not so favorable foods and substances from their diet, and introduce more healthy ones. And also another common theme that Taurus natives might be experiencing is a much more holistic approach to all of these things, health wise, but also diet wise, and also, how to have a much more balanced daily routine. For natives born under the sign of Gemini, this week and also this period with the nodal shifts and the cardinal grand cross does mean a really, really powerful wake-up call. Now the North Node enters into the part of their sky which rules social connections, their position, their place in society based on their aspirations, ideals that they share with other people. So this means that if you believe in something, and when I say it's not religious, of course, it's more like something in life, something in the world, a common dream, a project, something that you want to be part of, something that you want to experience, enjoy, or, create, or be the creating force, anything like this. And this can be deeply personal as well. Your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations, and creating your long-term future. So all of these things included. Now, if you want to be living certain things which spark from your heart of hearts, from your heart space, from your creative center, the inner child, or of course, if you have children of your own, life setup must be changed. And when I say life setup, more like the people who you are connected to. If you have a big dream and simply don't know how to accomplish it, you must find a person or a group or something out there, even on the internet, even virtual, even online, that can have you as integrate part of it or can initiate you. This is where Gemini natives have to seek new, different, ingenious, and innovative social connections. Now, Gemini natives, with their very core of their being, not everyone, of course, but many natives are social creatures. They do possess a strong social power. Now, if they use it or not, if they embody it or not, this is a totally different subject, but they do have the potential. So the social element is always something quite highlighted for them. It is a power that they can possess, but this time with the North Node into Aries, they have to take it much more seriously than ever before. And how do you take it seriously? Self-knowledge. Very, very profound self-knowledge. The North Node, when it was in your sign in 2020, 2021, if I'm not mistaken, that kind of taught you a very powerful lesson of what part of the self is true and authentic, and what part of the self is merely a creation of compromise for you to fit in, for you to complement partnerships, connections, friendships, other people. Which part of you is just diplomatic? And those years kind of stripped away the diplomatic, because time changed, people changed, energies changed. So the diplomatic had to go from the soul matrix, but not permanently, but leaving an empty space for you to develop new diplomacy, new diplomatic skills, new connections, new ways of connecting. And that new ways of connecting is embodying your principles, your faith, and whatever it is that you believe in a much, how should I say, truer sense than ever before. And this is exactly the foundation of the new connections and pursuing them and going about them, basically. And of course, when I say it's not just Gemini natives who are going to be seeking this out, they are going to be sought out, they're going to be connected, they're going to be integrated. Sometimes they're simply going to be sucked up by something larger that simply needs them out of sheer resonance. Now, of course, the Venus retrograde takes place in your third house. So this is all about communication. This is all about, again, how do you present yourself? How do you present everything that you love? Your communications must include your passions, Venus retrograde there. And this is not just in immediate energy. This is for the coming months, the summer and the autumn. Whatever it is that you speak, whatever it is that you present, whatever it is that you project out there communication-wise, has to contain what you love, and also in a certain way what you do not agree. Because otherwise your connections cannot be charged with the Venusian energy. And the Venusian energy is very, very, very important to exactly go and achieve that which you believe in. The connections, the people, the ideals, and life has to support you in that sense for the next 18 months. And also the Sun opposing Pluto in the 2 and 8th house axis. That is a very powerful financial energy. How do you rearrange your material situation, your personal values, in order to get you there? So it is quite an intense week and intense period for Gemini natives, but there is a lot of empowerment there. For natives born under the sign of Cancer, this will be quite an awakening week, so to speak. And of course, this awakening will stay with them all throughout the summer and autumn because the North Node moved into their 10th house. The 10th house, in a very general way of understanding, it is basically your relationship with the world. You and everything that is in existence. And what these two elements do with one another. What is their relationship? So what it is that you project onto the world, what it is that you have to give to the world, what it is that you do to basically shape, form, influence the external your own unique way. Now, of course, for many natives, this is more like the class typical exception of career and soul path and etc. etc. But especially around the 22nd, you guys are still the hosts of the sun, where the sun will square this north node, and that is the awakening factor. The sun in Cancer, so basically in your sign, is all about the self. It is all about you and your persona, your being illuminated in the spotlight. Maybe not necessarily collectively in the spotlight, but it can also be internally, where your being just focuses on you. What it is that you're doing. Where are your higher goals and aspirations, your dreams? Where are these taking you? And you have Venus retrograde in your 2nd house. So everything that is valuable, everything that you possess as a personal treasure, as a skill, as something to highlight your value. Value basically not just in relation with society, with the world, with others, but also relation with the self. Because, for example, let me just give you an example. Someone might have certain talent, skills that are basically valuable, but if that person doesn't really do anything with them, they might be aware that they have this, but if they just sit on it, that value is not really expressed. So it will not reflect on the 8th house. The 8th house, which, is very, very important in this case, because that's where other people share the values with you. So basically, when you have something valuable in your life, it is in the 8th house that is reflected and that is basically embodied. Now, you guys also have Pluto in the 7th house. So partnership, contracts, others, simply said. How much power do they have over you? And how much power do you have over them? This is where you have to find the most appropriate dynamic which works for you in your life. And this isn't the searching or the job of 1 week. This is where it takes the whole period, especially that Venus is all about relationship, all about partnerships, all about what you value as well. So there will be strong discussions, there will be strong negotiations, and also soul searching and personal introspective of what your partnerships have to mean for you but depending on the person who you grew into in the present moment and how they will change your future. And ultimately, this is where it all points to the life path, to your relationship with the world. If you need that relationship to look in a certain way, to feel a certain way, then it is all these things that will go through profound transformation. And needless to say, the South Node in the fourth house, your roots, your family, the past, everything that you have done until now, how does that influence you? Does that weigh heavily on you? Is that a limitative force? Or quite the contrary? Do you have a lot of unused treasures, skills, help, resources in there? And so what do you do with that? So thank you so very much, Cancer natives, and wishing you a wonderful week. For natives born under the sign of Leo, this week can be quite emotional because the sun in your 12th house does converse, in an opposition with Pluto, and then it will hold the Grand Cardinal Grand Cross with the nodes of the moon and Pluto. And the 12th house does represent, especially with the sun in it, that something is coming to your awareness. May that be a secret. May that be a communication or revelation from a person from the past returning, or a person very close to your heart, but you might see them in a totally different light, or they might be sharing some secrets with you, some very personal stuff. Or it can be that some things, for example, feelings, emotions, traumas, the reminiscence of the past just shoots out from you like a geyser due to certain things, that external things that might happen. For example, communication, South Node in your third house now. That means relationship with siblings, with cousins, with neighbors, and basically one-on-one alliances. It is basically where people will share information and facts and even data with you, but that can cause a reaction. Venus retrograde in your first house, so you guys are the hosts of Venus retrograde, and this week, as I said, Venus is part of the yacht configuration, where Neptune for you guys from the 8th house and Pluto for you guys from the 6th house is pointing at this Venus. So that is a very, very deeply personal energy. Mercury also in your sign, so you guys are the hosts of Mercury as well. Communication, processing information, everything deeply personal about you. What do those unconscious inner forces bring to the surface all throughout the week, where the end of the week is highlighted with the Grand Cross? How does that make you feel? What does that say about you deeply personally and the person who you're growing into? Because Venus retrograde for you guys, again I have to repeat, is very deeply personal. Who it is that you want to become, who it is that you definitely do not want to become, and want to eliminate every influencing factor from your life in that sense, in the negative sense. What it is that you want to block out from your life. And Pluto in the 6th house. How will you becoming the person who you find in your heart of hearts change your modus vivendi, your everyday routines, your service, your job, your everyday program? Because very powerful transformation is going to be taking place in that area of life. Maybe job, maybe livelihood, lucrative purposes, or your relationship with other people who you're serving may come as an interfering factor, but still that interfering factor will show you what kind of balance and what kind of equilibrium do you need to have in your life and how to create it. Mars also in the 2nd house, it's all about how to dish your best of the best, your values, or for example, how to make a really, really safe, sound, and wise investment to serve your long-term future, but Saturn is opposing this Mars, so this might not be easy. This might take an extra muscle or extra patience, or to fight against frustrations, or a Saturn in the 8th house, everything in that life that basically restricts these important moves right now. Sometimes all you can do is play the waiting game, but while waiting, you still must keep your values fresh and, intact. So thank you, Leo natives, and wishing you a really powerful and wonderful week. For natives born under the sign of Virgo, well, this is going to be a rather interesting and quite emotional week and extended period of summer and autumn. First of all, this Venus retrograde takes place in your 12th house. And Venus does love being in the 12th house, where she's all about romance. She's all about the ideal. She's all about dreams. She's all about the more ethereal and not so concrete elements of our lives. Now, Mercury with Black Moon Lilith being there, this can also represent that some communication reaches you. Unexpected communication or certain truths are being dished out to you, and how do you react to that immediately, let's say. But speaking about the longer term, the extended Venus retrograde period, where the shadow is also included, how present is romance, how present is love, Venus, how present is pleasure and joy in your life. And this is where these elements, having these elements in your life, it comes to your realization that it's not really optional. Pleasures, everything that has to do with happiness, everything that has to do with our dreams, everything that has to do with our inner motivations and spirituality. These are also very, very important components in a person's life, which give us our normal and usual, our balanced and equilibrious and serene vibes. These are just like, having our basic needs met. These are also like our five senses, which do need to receive certain kind of stimulus for us to be able to feel like human beings. The requirements, the necessities, the needs of our inner forces, those dreams, the romance, the happiness, the artistic expression. When I say artistic expression, not necessarily where you're an artist and you have to create, but you being the recipient, you being a consumer, so to speak, of art, having artistic moments, going, for example, like festivals, like places where that 12th house Venus is really, really elevated. Those are going to be very, very important. And chances are this is where your plans are going to be directed towards. How to have all of these much, much more than until this present moment in your life. And for certain Virgo natives, how will romance, how will certain kind of dreams, how will a certain kind of spiritual touch tune up, amp up your love life, your marriage, your long-term partnerships, if this is the case. For other Virgo natives, especially those who are looking, well, this speaks to how do you attract the right person, the romance and love into your life. For other Virgo natives still, this is where the nodes of the moon are in the 2nd and 8th house axis. 8th house being Aries hosting the north node. So this is all about business. This is all about money. This is all about getting where you need to be financially. And when I say financially, not necessarily to have a certain amount of resources, but a life to work, to have the transaction, which is almost like self-sufficient, to have a certain kind of automatic balance in your life which provides for you, where your values are there, always ready to be accessed when you want to make an investment, sorry, or when you want to share your resources with other people. So this period will also start a really meticulous brainstorming where you really get to the plan of how will you accomplish that right business setup, the dynamics between your assets and debt. So for some Virgo natives, erasing all that from their lives will also really be important, because Venus in the 12th house, sometimes it is just having that and the knowledge of it which upsets the energy, which takes away the liberty, even if it's just a very minor psychological energy. But in order to get to higher ground, so to speak, the solution is just to eliminate that so you won't be aware of it anymore. But anyway, the South Node being in the second house, this is where everything that you've done in the past needs to be, let's say, processed. Things that you've done and worked like a charm have to be selected and put on into a new way, a new form, a new format to serve you. And the harsh lessons of which investments, which financial speculations, which ways to go about, money and finances did not work, fail, or, caused a certain kind of loss, those also need to be taken into consideration as powerful life lessons. Natives born under the sign of Libra are definitely going to be feeling very intensely this cardinal grand cross. Of course, one of the reasons is that you guys are the hosts, the new hosts of the South Node. Well, on first hand, this definitely means that in the next 18 months there has to be certain changes in the modus operandi. This is a very deep and personal energy where it kind of appeals to your boundaries. How much and what and in which way do you tolerate? Libra natives are, of course, the diplomat of the zodiac. They are the ones who usually always find a common ground with anything, with anyone. They can always find, a non-confrontational way to approach a conflict, to approach a difficult situation. But it is exactly these strong Libra traits which might not be working in the next 18 months. This is where even Libra natives have to be a little bit confrontational. Even they have to basically start doing certain things like their opposite sign, Aries, to have the initiation, to have the boldness, to have the courage to ask someone, to determine someone, to convince someone to help them. But more importantly, the boundaries, where you say no, where you stand up for yourself, you stand up for your principles, you politely, or in some cases not as politely, refuse that which you really don't want for you or to get involved with. Now, the North Node being in your opposite sign, Aries, this complicates the energy even further, because partnerships, the energy, the potential, the strong initiatory energy is exactly at your partnerships. So chances are, if you want to get somewhere, do something, it will be a partner who will represent the path there, or the key, or to give it to you. If you need to, advance career-wise, or, in your relationship, why not? Because 7th house is also marriage and the classical exception of partnerships. This is also where it comes from the partner, or it depends on the partner. The impulse is in the partner's hands. So the North Node also means new contracts, new alliances, new agreements, new one-on-one alliances, where, exactly as I said, whatever the South Node needs to release, that North Node is the path forward. So this begins a period where as I said, new people, new partnerships, or old partnerships in a new format are definitely going to be part of the landscape. And certain things that you need to accomplish, achieve, or, obtain, partnerships and other people, the seventh house, so to speak, domain, is the one of the primarily keys to it. Now, you also have the Sun opposing Pluto in the 10th house. So Pluto is in the 4th house. This speaks about how much our past, our family, our living situation, our local community is limiting us. Or is there some kind of power? Is there some kind of empowerment, enforcement, resource, support available there that we are blind to or we are not using because of whatever personal reason? So it can play out one way or another, where that Sun in the 10th house does require us to start either taking back our power and terminating that setup which does not favor us. But at the same time, if there's options there, if there's opportunities there, and we're just ignoring them, we might need to actually go and use them, regardless what kind of compromises that may ask from us. For natives born under the sign of Scorpio, well, this starts a really complex and, I must be honest with you, not a very easy period, because it is about purges. You have the South Node. You guys were, until this week, the hosts of the South Node. Now it is shifting into Libra. And for you guys, that is the 12th house domain. So this means powerful releases. Of course, this may not really be an immediate energy. You might just be feeling immediately a bit more emotionally, let's say, tense, but really, really prepared to, sort it out, to calm yourself down, but for good. So for many Scorpio natives, maybe a visit to a healer, a therapist, a psychologist, a cleric, or to do your own spiritual work, your own unique personal methodologies to release traumas, to release the past, to release old blocked up, bottled up emotions is gonna definitely begin. And this will be the part of the next 18 months of your life. But the North Node being in the sign of Aries, so the 6th house domain for you guys, well, this comes with a lot of help. This comes with a lot of opportunities. This comes with perhaps the best people, in the sense of professionals or friends or people who can help. And actually doing this is very, very important, because it will simply give you a totally different quality of life. But this energy is quite complex, because a part of this is physical. So certain natives who do have physical problems as well, problems, let's say, with bones, problems with their hormones, like blood chemistry, problems with mobility, problems with digestive tract, problems, for example, with eyes and teeth. But really, in a larger sense, just medical problems, which aren't necessarily all that big deal, but there has to come a time to really sort them out and take care of them. And this is what you owe to yourself. Now, that time is coming now in the next 18 months of your life, when there is going to be a lot of psychological purging, including spiritual, family karma, anything that you inherited even from past lives. Any kind of karmic rebalancing is definitely part of the picture. But going back to that North Node in the 6th house, there is going to be a lot of good that these purges, these eliminations, let's say even doctor's visits or visiting the therapist, the healer, or just you using your own methodology to heal, these are going to show results. And ultimately, in the next 18 months, the potential is a big life transformation where it's not really the big ideal of it all, because chances are that already exists. It is more about the practical, the down to earth, the physical. This is where you may dream of transforming or living a transformed life, but in the next 18 months actually doing that physically in a down to earth, in a real way, and making that a long term part of life. Now, Venus retrograde in the 10th house. So this will be like the typical soul searching for Scorpio natives, in the sense that how do I tune up my career? Or is my present career working for me still for the long term? Or is it time that I truly think about a change? Or this is where you might already be in this period, Venus in shadow, where you don't know, you feel a strong creative energy, you feel strong impulses, you feel so ready to go and do something with your life, career, soul, 10th house stuff. But the answers and how and why and where and who with are not yet there. Now, this might be the Venus retrograde for you guys to find how. But in order to find how, you must find what it is that you would really, really love to do, embody, or be part of. And Mercury conjunct Black Moon Lilith is also in this 10th house quite a relevant energy. Now, the moon opposing Pluto, 9th and 3rd house axis, is all about the philosophy of it. It is all about the right mindset. This is where you cannot heal, you cannot purge, you cannot live a better life and lifestyle if your thoughts or your core beliefs do not reflect this. So for some Sagittarius natives, in order to clear out certain things from the closet, so to speak, legal and financial and official issues might be needing to be initiated. For example, succession, or solving a testament, solving a pending legal issue, replying to authorities, doing something at the bank. But all of these are basically legal paperwork, the nitty gritty. And some natives might also need to travel abroad to sort out certain issues, while for others still there's an invitation to work abroad, and this is what you need to process. For natives born under the sign of Sagittarius, well, for them equally, this represents a really intense period where there will be a lot of soul searching, emotional search, searching what their heart of hearts is telling them. And there might be also a change of scenery where the South Node in their 11th house might cause a distancing, disconnection from certain people, certain friends, certain groups. Anyone or anything they share some kind of ideologies or philosophies or goals or aspirations with, which simply no longer resonates with them. They can no longer find themselves. They can no longer find their own authenticity in these connections. So their group of friends, circle of friends, but especially the more extended version of this, might suffer quite a lot of modifications and transformations. So people leave, new people come in that sense, over the course of the next 18 years, and this impulse, this urge begins already next week. Now, the idea is that they want to feel a certain kind of value, that they are loved, that they are valued, but not in a purely subjective or selfish way, but they want to give something. What is demanded of them, and what are they willing to offer, to share, to give, to project, or to create? This will be the big question of the next 18 months. And the answer is the balance, of course, that they need to find. But firstly, this Venus retrograde is in the part of their sky which has to do with law, with justice, with their own worldview, philosophies, and specialization in knowledge and education, higher education, so to speak. So for some natives, this is where either they might be thinking, and this goes for the extended Venus retrograde period, how do I use or reuse a skill, a diploma, a mastery, a specialization that I already possess? How do I use it in a better way, in a greater way, in a more empowered way? While for others, this is where you do have a skill or a specialization, or you went to uni but do not work in that domain, and you might be trying to find a way to integrate it in your life, even if it not in a very, very classical way. Others still might be thinking about, should I take back the old career that I left behind? Is that better for me? Venus retrograde can also represent that. While for others, do they move back abroad? Especially those who did work or did live a distance to their local culture. For others still, this is about legal stuff. Do you engage in that legal activity? For example, demanding your rights, fighting, contesting something in a court of justice, or a project or something that needs some kind of legally binding paper that a court of justice needs to give you. So all of these things might be part of Leo natives' lives. And also talking about education and specialization and mastery, some might be thinking, do I go to this university? Do I take this course? Do I complete this study? How will it add value to my life? So for a lot of natives, this is where this Venus retrograde is going to be playing out in their lives. But also the Sun and Pluto are on the financial axis. Sun being in the 8th house, Pluto in the 2nd house. So exactly how do they embody their greater values? How do they make that what they possess, skill, money, resources, investment, beauty, anything that they have, how do they make that serve them much better than before? And also the Sun in Cancer opposing Pluto, there might be certain things that need to be sorted out with family, like an inheritance, or if you're going through a divorce, who belongs to what, etc., etc. For natives born under the sign of Capricorn, it is gonna be quite an intense weekend period, but just like for every other cardinal sign, because you guys are the hosts of this Pluto retrograde. And in your configuration, it is in the 1st house. So that means a lot of things do very much depend on you. You guys are the force of change in your own lives. Now the South Node being in the sign of Libra, which for you guys is the 10th house, without a doubt, all throughout the year and even starting from last year, your life changed quite a lot. The setup of your lives. Maybe it hasn't changed physically yet, as in the material elements, but the plan, the feeling, the aspiration, the desires, and who you guys found to be in that transformational process, that is so very different than it used to be. And you're in the midst of this life transformation where you want to get the physical elements to reflect that which was a feeling or of spirit. And what's really important is that Venus retrograde is going to take place in your 8th house. So it is all about what it is that you love, financially speaking, in the sense, how would you like your life to be like financially? How much and what do you share with others? How comfortable are you with this? Sharing, who, with, and in which manner and in which quantity in. May that be, project based, may that be a job, because even at a job you share your time, your inner resources, your skills with a company, while the company shares, the money or the salary or the reward while you're working there. So all of these things are going to be under the microscope under this Venus retrograde period. Also what creativity, what passion, what the joy of being immersed in life means to you, and how did you used to live this out in the past, and how will this be different in the future. How are you gonna put some kind of change onto that area? The eighth house is also a sexual house, so for a lot of people this is where they might go back Venus retrograde and explore certain pleasures, certain joys, and certain partners, certain people who you used to have a connection with in the past, and certain activities. While for others this is where the need for a strong emotional and sexual healing will be highlighted. So this Venus retrograde, especially when squaring Uranus, might represent an unusual person, an unusual event that actually gets you there. But apart from this, it's really about money, it's really about financial energies, where you really want to maximize what it is that you can offer. And the Sun opposing Pluto in the first and seventh house axis, this is also about partners and partnerships and existing contracts. For those Capricorn natives who are in an established bond, this is where your life is changing, transforming. You have so much initiative in your life, but at the same time, this is where you also have to take your partner with you. So how does your partner feel about this? How can they meet you in this transformational journey of yours, and what is happening in their lives, and how do you have to be present in whatever is important in their lives as well? While for other natives, especially those who are single, how do you get into an established stable partnership, and what does that even mean to you? What are your terms and conditions? And what are those terms and conditions that you have to either accept or decline? So it's really not a very easy energy. It is really complex because it links the first house, seventh house, fourth and 10th house, and Venus retrograde the 8th house together. So that's quite a lot to process. Of course, there are a lot of interconnected elements which speak about all of these houses in their own way. For example, the North Node in your 4th house. How will your home situation, where you will live, or where you will feel that you belong in the world, where are your roots in the world, how will that upgrade your career? How will that fuel your career? And sometimes this is where, if your career goes against that, if your career is a limiting force, then how do you make adjustments or compromises in that sense? For natives born under the sign of Aquarius, well, it's gonna be quite an interesting and intense Venus retrograde, because it takes place for you guys in the 7th house. So that is one of the houses that Venus naturally rules. And it's also the house which has to do with partnerships, alliances, one-on-one connections, and also contracts of any kind, agreements of any kind, and justice and the law. So, needless to say, Aquarius natives who are in an established bond, in a marriage, in a stable partnerships, this is where it will be a powerful introspection, where you will go back. How does this alliance, how does this partnership serve me? How did it serve me in the past? How is it serving me in the present? And what potential do I have for the future, basically? How This is where you might be looking back at how your partnership, how your marriage, how your relationship evolved starting from the moment you met until the present moment, and going back on the past and the most relevant events, may those be physical, material, or of course purely emotional. Whatever has happened can also in a way predict or reflect the future. And if you know Venus retrograde, you find things that they're not working, they're stale, they are in a way dead. They do not serve your relationship anymore. That is where this Venus retrograde can be a really, really good time for you guys to find something new, to heal the relationship, to fix the relationship, to tune up the relationship. In that sense, Black Moon Lilith in the sign of Leo is actually a positive sign. Venus, of course, will conjunct Black Moon Lilith later on. That meeting might be very important because Lilith can expose and express what is in your partner's hearts of hearts, their true soul level desire. Maybe one that they could not express to you, maybe one that they were shy to speak about or kept hidden in. But this confrontation, this exposure can help find the middle path. It can help find the proper balance for your relationship to work harmoniously even for the future. Now, of course, for some natives, this will mean the conclusion to, terminate the relationship, and in that sense, it can quickly turn into the house of justice and the law, divorce in that sense. But I do repeat, this is over the course until until the end of the year. So all of the summer, all of the autumn, and this is Venus. So how we feel about it. And Venus retrograde is multi-dimensional because she will converse as she goes back on her path with Jupiter, with Uranus, and with Aries in the sign of Aries, for example. So all of those conversations, celestial conversations, will add new information, new feelings, new dimensions of thought and emotion, which will highlight something totally different, something totally new. So even if things look like it's going towards a divorce, allow Venus retrograde to end and even Venus to get out of shadow before you make a final decision. For others still, those who are single especially, this is where someone from the past might return into your life and will ask you, do we want to give it another go or let's just try it again? And like with any Venus retrograde, either you might be reminded of every single reason why it didn't work in the first place, or how much you and the person have transformed, evolved, changed over the course of the years. So the relationship is also going to be very different. But of course, this Venus retrograde is all about contracts, all about one-on-one alliances, so business, anything that is not just romantic in nature. But Pluto being in the 12th house, opposing the Sun in the 6th house, this also represents for Aquarius natives very, very powerful truths that you have to admit to yourself. So this is where it's a one-on-one soul discussion with yourself, with the self, where you need to admit certain things, certain truths, certain things that you feel, or certain things that for a fact about yourself, about your feelings, that might need to be either spoken of or addressed at least by you, because the Sun in the 6th house represents that certain things in life cannot continue the way they are right now. Practical changes in routines, modus vivendi, and basically your day-to-day schedule need to take place, because as I said, some things have lived their final stages. They cannot go on the way they used to in the future. For natives born under the sign of Pisces, this is going to be quite an interesting period where they can expect a lot of, let's say, purge and elimination at first hand, followed by a very strong constructive period. Now, the nodes of the moon enter into their financial axis, the second and eighth house, where the north node is in the second house. So in the next 18 months, it will be all about embodying your values, embodying everything that you love, embodying the joys of life, especially in their simplicity, the non-complicated ones, to free yourself, to free your time, to free even your mind from the unnecessary complications of life, from unnecessary relationship, from unnecessary people, from businesses, from lucrative activities that might have a certain reward without a shadow of doubt, but you reached a time in your life when you really don't want to be immersed into it because it's simply not necessary and you choose to give up. This can represent a lot of physical healing as well, releasing old emotions, old desires, old obsessions, old goals, old wants, old, you know, anything that you thought you needed in life and went after it. This is where it might dawn to you basically that you are a different person right now, that you no longer need those, you no longer want those, you no longer even resonate with those. So there will be quite a lot of purging, especially that Pluto is also in the 11th house, which means friends, connections, people, society, and hopes and dreams and goals and aspirations as well, which are no longer resonant, are simply fading away, disconnecting, disappearing. It doesn't mean that back then you didn't resonate with the principle, with the goal, with the person, with anything that has to do with that social connection or your place in the world. Back then, the resonance was, a really important part of your life, but now maybe you outgrow it. You lived it sufficiently that you no longer need it, and you're ready for something else, something new, something different, including people-wise. So, as certain people will start to leave your friendship area of your life, new ones will progressively come and take their places, but new ones, as I said, reflecting of your values that you will be working on very, very strongly in the next 18 months. Because the North Node in the second house is truly living life to its fullest, finding your happiness, your joy, especially the five senses in life, and building something to last you for at least minimalistically the next 18 years of your life.